Welcome to the Lakeshore Christian Church Midweek podcast. I'm Pastor Randy Cordell. We're coming to you live from our studio here at our Antioch campus in Nashville, Tennessee. We're glad to have you joining us today. If you haven't already done so, we'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast. Just hit that subscription button. You might also want to hit that notification bell so that you get notified each time a new episode drops. We come to you live at noon on Wednesdays, but once it's posted, you can listen to it anytime after that on most popular podcast platforms. Each week on the podcast, we spend some time talking about the message series that we're in here at Lakeshore. Right now, we're in a series going through the life of David. The title of the series is David, the Life of a King. And we can learn a lot from David's life. It's recorded for us in Scripture, and many details are given that we can learn from, both the good things in David's life and also the downfalls and the failures and what led to those things. We can learn a lot from that can help keep us from making those same mistakes. So we, this past week, looked at 1 Samuel chapter 18, the first 9 verses there, as we focused on the time right after David slays the giant Goliath. It was a huge victory for David personally, for the Israelite army, for them as a people and their relationship with God. It was huge. The Philistine army had been taunting them and ridiculing their God, and David was the one that God used to stand up against that giant and that ridicule and establish again that God was with his nation, his people, and that God provided the victory for them. And David pointed everything to God. But even though David was doing that, trying to be sure God got all the credit, it certainly changed David's life dramatically in a lot of ways. It was a mountaintop experience for David to slay that giant, and not only to slay the giant, but then to see the reaction of the people after he had done that. There was huge celebration. There was a victory parade marching back into town, and David was experiencing all of this attention and all of this praise and all of this adoration from all of the people. In that passage in 1 Samuel 18, it says in verse 6, when the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs, with timbrels and lyres, and they danced. As they danced, they sang. Here's the refrain that they were singing. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They've credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, it says, Saul kept a close eye on David. Now, even though it had been a mountaintop experience for David, some of the consequences of being on that mountaintop and getting all that attention and all that praise would complicate David's life greatly. Many people stumble and fall at a time of great success in their lives. When they've gotten that promotion, or they're making more money than they've ever made before, or everything seems to be going well, all their ducks are in a row, and things are really clicking for them, sometimes it could cause a person to get overconfident, to have their ego get out of control, to lead them to think they don't need the accountability in their lives anymore. They start feeling entitled in a lot of ways, and that's when you let your guard down in your relationship with God and keeping yourself on track the way you need to, and you can easily be led into something that's devastating to you or that hurts other people in your life when you're not really keeping up your guard the way you need to. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 12, so if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. When you experience a mountaintop experience, it really has a direct effect on you and on your relationship with other people. And so this past Sunday, we focused on 4 different relationship tests that David was facing after he had this mountaintop experience. The first one was David and his relationship with Saul, which I labeled a test of submission. It's hard to submit when you're the one getting the attention and the praise, when you're the one that seems to be winning the victories, having the accomplishments that you're having, you still have to be submissive in certain relationships that you have. In verse 5, it says this about David and Saul. It says, whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. Even though David had already been selected by God to be the next king, even though David had been anointed by Jonathan, even though David had been praised for killing the giant and recognized as a national hero, Saul was still the king right then. He was the one that was going to be still in authority, have that position of authority. And even though Saul wasn't the man he needed to be at this point, even though he wasn't pleasing to God and how he was living his life and ruling as king, he still was on the throne. And David made the decision that as long as Saul was on the throne, he was going to be submissive. He was going to be the one that would still honor the position, even though Saul was not living a life that really was worthy of honor in a lot of other ways. And I think that's something that we all have to learn to do, because we all are going to have some people from time to time who might be over us in authority or position or by title, and they may not be, maybe they don't have the training we have or the experience we have or the wisdom we have. They don't have the insight maybe on what's the better way to do things sometimes. But still, because of their position, there is this instruction in God's word that we need to honor as well, which is to submit to those who are in authority over us and to be willing to come under them because they're in that position. Whether we think they are living like they should or acting the way they should or even managing the business the way we think they ought to manage it, if they are our boss, if they are someone who has some kind of authority over us in the business world, wherever you work, whatever job you have, there is this call from God for us to treat them with dignity and respect because of the position that they hold. I used the illustration of presidents in my lifetime. I'm not always, in fact, there's never been a president that I agreed with 100% of the time, with every decision, with every policy that they were promoting, with every thing they instituted in their role as president, or even in their personal lives, some of the things they did. There's never been one with whom I was in 100% agreement. But I wanted to still honor the office of president. And so I would pray for them, no matter what party they belonged to, no matter what the affiliation they had with political affiliations with certain other politicians. I still saw them as the president who was in a position that should be honored by the citizens of the country. And so it can be hard sometimes when you're in disagreement. It can be hard sometimes when you wish they would do things differently than they're doing them. But there is this call from God to be submissive to others. In fact, the scripture says, before it says, wives, be submissive to your husbands, husbands, love your wives, he says, submit to one another out of reverence for God, because of our relationship with God. We need to have a submissive spirit. Now, submission doesn't mean that you're going to be a doormat where people just walk all over you. It's not talking about that. But it's talking about orders. It's talking about, like in the military, you have people who have a higher rank than you. And whether you like that person or not, they have a higher rank than you. And you, in order for the military to function properly, you have to be submissive to those who have those ranks higher than yours, that have authority over you. That's the way it's got to work in order for the military to function. Well, all of life is that way to some degree. There are positions and titles and functions that put us in submission to others, and we need to be willing to accept the challenge of submission in a way that's God-honoring, in a way that honors the position that the other person has. You can still ask questions. You can still disagree respectfully and talk through those things and try to work them out. But it is truly a test of submission. And David, as young as he was, even with all this adoration he was receiving, he still was willing to be submissive to Saul as king. The second relationship we looked at was David with the Israelites, his fellow countrymen. Here they are giving him this great exaltation of praise for what he had done. And I called this a test of exaltation. When you're the one getting the praise and the attention, the fame and the popularity can really inflate the ego, and you can lose sight of the reality. David could have, as a young man, lost sight of the reality that it was God really who had won the victory. Now, he used David. David was obedient. He played a role in that. But God is the one who gave him that victory over that giant. Now, he gave it to him because of David met certain conditions, right? He had the faith he needed to have. He took the action he needed to take. But this was truly God's victory. And sometimes we forget when we're being praised or we have some great popularity and people are talking good about us, it's hard for us to be keeping our humility in check, where we're not getting an inflated ego. So you have to remember, any good thing we have, the scripture tells us, it comes down from the Father. It comes down from God's blessing. It's God's provision for us. It's God allowing us to have that or providing that for us. So we need to always be pointing to God and giving him the credit and offering him the worship and the praise that he is worthy of receiving. Well, the third relationship we looked at was a unique relationship between David and Jonathan. Jonathan is Saul's son. He was actually, according to the way they did things in their culture, he would have been next in line for the throne. But instead, God has already chosen David to be next in line. And Jonathan was an amazing young man who was willing to accept God's plan there, and not only accept it, but support David throughout the whole process. Jonathan and David, it says, Jonathan became one in spirit with David. He loved him as himself, and they made this covenant with each other to honor each other as friends and to truly be friends where they could trust each other completely. And I talked about 4 marks of true friendship. I've shared these before. I got them from another pastor, from Bob Russell. He listed these, and I really think they apply to all of our friendships. If they're true friendships, there are 4 marks that will be there. One is a voluntary willingness to sacrifice for the good of the other. You're willing to put yourself in the background to elevate the other person. If you really love them as a friend and you really want what's best for them, you're not going to resent it when they have accolades or when they get recognized or when they get an opportunity to advance themselves. You're going to support them in that. Jonathan gave up rightful claim to the throne, recognizing God's call on David. He was willing to sacrifice what, in the world's eyes, he could have thought should have been his. The second mark was a loyal defense, even when you're not in the room. And I asked the question, I said, don't think of this as, do your friends do this for you? You need to ask yourself, am I being this kind of friend? That even when my friend is not in the room, if other people are gossiping about them or telling something about them to tear them down or hurt them in some way, do I just stay quiet, or do I join in with the gossip, or do I stand up for my friend? Do I take up for them even when they're not there, even when it might cost me something to do so? In 1 Samuel 19, we see that Jonathan did that for David. It said, Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He's not wronged you, and what he's done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason? Saul had already decided he needed to get rid of David, and Jonathan is taking up for David. Even though David's not there to defend himself, Jonathan is standing up for him. Is that the kind of friend you are for your friends? We need more friends like that, don't we? Well, if we want to have friends like that, we need to be a friend like that, where we have a loyal defense of our friends. The third mark is freedom to be yourself around that friend. Or do you allow your friends to be themselves, good, bad, ugly, scars and warts and all, or you're allowing them to be who they are, to be genuine and real with you when they're in your presence? David and Jonathan had that kind of friendship where they could just be real, be themselves, be honest totally and completely. When they're struggling with something, when they're upset, they were they allowed each other to cry in each other's presence with the hard things that they were dealing with. That's the kind of friend that we all need, so we all need to be that kind of friend. And the fourth mark of that kind of friendship is you are a source of encouragement to your friend. In 1 Samuel 23, later on in the story, while David was at Horesh hiding out from Saul, the desert of Sif, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life, and Saul's son Jonathan went to David at Horesh and helped him find strength in God. "Don't be afraid," he said. "My father Saul will not lay a hand on you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you. Even my father Saul knows this." The two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and then Jonathan went home, but David remained at Horesh. So Jonathan made a special trip out to see David when David was hiding out, trying to protect his own life, and he went there to encourage him, to build him up. And we all need to be willing to be a friend like that, to encourage and build up our friends, where jealousy doesn't get in the way. Friends can strengthen each other, build each other up. So I pray that we can all learn to do a better job to be that kind of friend and not just expect others to do that for us, but to start out leading the way and doing those things for our friends. Well, the fourth relationship that we talked about is back to the Saul-David relationship again, where there is a test of opposition. When you have people attacking you, when you have people who aren't treating you fairly or saying unkind things about you, that's a true test of putting God first in your life and how you handle that, how you respond to that. It's not easy when someone is maybe falsely accusing or saying untrue things about your character. They're attacking you in some way. Saul decided when they were praising David so much that he needed to tear David down. He needed to either discredit David or send David out to battle and have him killed. And when that didn't work, he even made the decision that he himself needed to kill David. And David continued, this is an amazing thing, he continued to show respect to the position that Saul was in as king. And he did not try to retaliate. He did not try to eliminate Saul. He did not try to, more quickly than God wanted him to try to take over the throne, because he could have done that. He could have tried to take it by force, but he waited on God to do God's thing and God's timing. And here's what I have found out in life in this world, is that people will often oppose you when you start trying to be faithful to God and honor God and be obedient to God and accomplish what God's called you to do. And sometimes it will surprise you where the opposition comes from, sometimes from within your own camp, from within your own family, from within your own friend circle. When you start trying to make the changes you know God is calling on you to make, sometimes you'll find opposition from people that you never thought you were going to find opposition from. So you have to make a decision like David did. His decision was he was going to lead a God-honoring life even if other people opposed him in the process. And part of that God-honoring life was not trying to attack other people, even if they were attacking him. That doesn't mean he didn't take certain action, necessary action to protect himself and to be able to keep functioning and being obedient to God. But he did it in a way that was God-honoring and that showed dignity and respect and honor to the position of Saul as king at the same time. And so he looked for ways to respond to the attacks that were within God's will for his life, instead of doing things that the flesh would have inclined him to do. We are all fallen people under the curse of sin, and because of that, in the flesh, our natural reaction to being attacked is to retaliate, is to try to get back and get revenge on the person that might be attacking us. And we all have that natural inclination. And next week, we're going to talk more about that. We introduced it this past Sunday, but this coming Sunday, we're going to be talking about what I call life's most subtle temptation, and that is the temptation to get revenge on people that might have hurt us or were trying to hurt us along the way. So I hope you can be with us this Sunday. It's going to be another great lesson to learn from David's life as recorded in 1 Samuel. We're going to be in 1 Samuel 24 this Sunday as we look at that temptation that had to be there for David to try to get revenge against Saul and how he handled that in a way that was God-honoring. So we hope you can join us. We have services here at the Antioch campus at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. We have service at our Smyrna campus at 10 a.m. We live stream our services every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. If you can't be with us in person, we'd love for you to connect with us online. Before we go today, just a couple of things I want to remind you of. This coming Sunday, we've got a couple of things happening. One is we're going to be honoring our graduating seniors, our high school graduates, at our 9 o'clock service at the Antioch campus, at the 10 o'clock service at the Smyrna campus. And we're also going to be sending off our group to White Mills Christian Camp for Elementary Week of Campus, June the 1st through the 6th. So we hope you will be praying for our elementary age young people as they are at camp. We're also going to have some staff and volunteers there from our church family, joining together with people from other churches all around the area at White Mills Christian Camp up in White Mills, Kentucky. So be praying for them. Also, we're continuing to collect funds for our GAP Scholarship Program. If you can make a donation to that, you can do it through your regular giving page at lakeshorechristian.com. Click on the Give tab, and then you can, in the drop-down menu there, just select that it's for the Point Scholarship. Of course, you can still write a check for that and send that in. Just put Point Scholarship in the memo line there so we know that those funds go directly for that. So we help our students from Lakeshore be able to continue their education through Point University online there, tuition-free. And on Sunday, June the 22nd, we're going to be having a Thrift Smart donation drive where Thrift Smart, that thrift store, is going to have a truck here. We partner with them all the time. We've got a donation bin here at the Antioch campus. But that Sunday, we'll have a truck here at the end of each service for you to, they're going to collect your donations, and we'll want to try to fill up the truck that day with those donations. When we give those donations, they take those and weigh them, and we get gift cards given back to Lakeshore that we can use to help out people who might come to our church needing some help with getting some clothing or household items and things like that they could get at the Thrift Smart store there. We can give them those gift cards to use for that. Well, we want to thank you for joining us today. We hope we can see you in person sometime soon here at Lakeshore Christian Church as we continue to connect, grow, and serve.